Hello, everybody. My name is Arjun Dev Arora, and I'm the founder and managing partner of Valence Advisory. We support funds and founders and help accelerate their efforts via people, capital, and strategy. And now off to John.
Hi, John Lowe here, a co-founder and advisor at Valence Advisory. And I'll keep it short and sweet because today's guest is Ashley Bittner. I'll have Ashley introduce herself and what she's been up to these recent months and years.
Sure. Thank you guys for having me today. I really appreciate it. My name is Ashley Bittner. I'm a founding partner at Firework Ventures, a fund I co-founded with Bridget Lau. So we lead Series A investments in the future of work. And we take a human-centered approach to our investing. So we invest in tech companies that are supporting people through the massive transition the economy is undergoing. So for example, we've led investments or an investment in a company that provides hands-on training around middle skills jobs. Those are jobs like manufacturing, automotive. And then we've also, on the other spectrum, invested in companies or a company that is helping major Fortune 500 enterprises better manage their workforce and upskill them into the roles that are going to have more trajectory for them. So the other thing I'd mention is that our thesis is also reflected in how we operate as a fund. So we take this kind of human-centered approach to our investing. So we really believe in transparent communication with our founders, creating a good process for them. And we want those founders to get the support they need to help scale their companies. That can be things like coaching, stuff like that. And then Bridget and I also take that same approach to our partnership. So we can build a thriving, sustainable partnership that helps our founders. And so our goal is to become a category-defining fund in the future of work and to build a venture fund that's really focused or really known for the strength of its partnership.
Oh, thank you, Ashley. And Ashley, you didn't start out in venture straight after college, correct? So, what was your winding, interesting journey to today? How did you get into venture and what kept you going? And, and then kind of paint the picture of like, what did you see that really inspired you to co-create with Bridget, Firework VC?
Sure. So to your point, John, when I was in college, I had no idea what venture was. I had no intention of going towards business, but I was really interested in thinking about how you could affect change at scale. And so my original kind of work was actually much more on policy. And my coming out of college, I actually worked through Teach for America. I taught in the Bronx to get that kind of really on the ground experience. And it was there actually that I got interested in technology as a way of solving some of these major challenges I was seeing in my classroom. And that's not just education. That's also all the other things that people need to actually have upward mobility in their lives. And that actually underlies a lot of the Firework thesis that, education is really important, but it's not enough if you think about what actually drives that kind of change. So from Teach for America, it's funny because my school, I taught in the Bronx, like I mentioned, 5-story walk up, no air conditioning, no tech. So what I saw though is it was really challenging to meet all the needs that I saw there without any support from technology. So I actually ended up going to business school after teaching. I went to business school and policy school, went to Wharton, and I went to Harvard. And while I was there, I interned at a venture fund that was led by a man named Ted Mitchell. And I got hooked on venture then. I also interned with a startup and just fell in love with it and wanted to do that longer term. But as you know, there's no like one path into venture. And so coming out of business school, I worked for BCG, kind of got that experience. I was actually pulled into the Obama administration when I was at BCG. So I had Ted became the undersecretary for the Department of Education at the time. I got appointed to work for the Obama administration, and I went to work with Ted on the innovation agenda from the department's point of view. When I was leaving, Ted asked me what I was going to do when I grew up, and he said that I should go back to venture. And he introduced me to a man named Troy Patterson who had just launched a new fund. And about a month later, I was living in San Francisco, and never expected to be out here, but kind of a confluence of different opportunities and people over time kind of brought me out to the Bay. And I've thus far really loved working in venture, especially at the early stages. And then to your question around launching Firework. So from my investing experience, my previous world, I saw a market opportunity around future work that I was really excited about. And I also was really focused, as I mentioned, on the early stages, where I think this kind of category expertise really matters. A lot of the policy I was talking about before, really influences the way that we think about what are market opportunities and how that's going to play out over time. And so those two pieces, combined with my view of what kind of culture I'd want to work in long term, inspired me to work with Bridget and to build Firework, and happy to answer any more questions about that.
Yeah, great. That's really helpful. So far it sounds like you have quite a unique take. You and Bridget have a unique take on upward mobility and the future of work, because future of work is probably now a hashtag, right? That like an implicit meaning to the ecosystem. Would love for you to unpack a bit about you and Bridget's unique perspectives on, upward mobility, future of work, and, kind of pulling together your experience in policy and understanding what it takes to make systemic change and to make that change sustainable as well.
Mm-hmm. So as I kind of mentioned in the beginning, we think about future of work, to your point, like everyone's LinkedIn, so Twitter's, everyone's blowing up with future of work market maps right now. Largely, a lot of the trends that can underlie our thesis that are driving a lot of the conversation now, Bridget and I had seen coming. We'd invested in companies kind of we call the first wave of this from our previous world. And those trends have just really been accelerated by COVID. Those are things like remote distributed work, online training, stuff like that. So we think about this human-centered approach. And so we are thinking about what is actually helping people in the transition of the economy. So less so about like robotics or AI, and more about how people will adapt and be able to thrive given the pace of change that's driven by advancements in technology. So we tend to invest in these four kind of verticals. One is new models of work. We invest in a company called BrainTrust in that category. It's a user-owned freelancer marketplace. One's called worker mobility. That's about how people are changing and finding new occupations given the changes in the economy. So there's research that suggests that prior to COVID, that as much as a third of the U.S. workforce would need to change jobs by 2030. And we can't just hire and fire our way out of those needs. So how do enterprises actually better manage their existing workforces? And we invested in a company called LearnIn in that category. We've also thought about what supports do people need outside of their job, I should say, to really thrive given all these changes, especially given the nature of the employer-employee relationships really changing. You don't necessarily get all the benefits you might have in the past from your employer. So within that category, we've invested in a company called Catch that provides portable benefits for the alternate workforce. And then finally, we also think about what skills do people need to thrive in this new economy. So we believe the future of work is a blend of uniquely human skills, leadership, communication, creativity, collaboration, things that at least right now we don't think will get automated away in the short term. And then in-demand technical and digital skills that people can grow over time. And so within that category, we've invested and led around in a company, it's not announced yet, but that helps with upskilling middle skills roles. So that could be everything from like automotive to green tech, specifically around rural and middle America. And so again, if you think about our thesis relative to what other funds are kind of focused on in this space, it really is thinking about how do people thrive given all these changes, and what are the full range of supports and services, not just education, that people need to be able to achieve that upward mobility. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that really does. That really does. And, it's fascinating because you're speaking, I'm thinking you are a venture fund, and obviously you have an obligation or duty to generate returns for your LPs and being a steward of capital. But as a result of having this different approach to the future of work and upward mobility, what economic opportunity do you see your fund can secure that perhaps someone who has a less multidimensional take on future of work would miss?
Yeah, I think we look to see, really to look for the white spaces here that we think are these outsized market opportunities. For example, one of the companies that I just mentioned focus, many of the students or customers that are being served by it are in, like, one of their biggest customers in Alabama, right? In Texas, now there's other places that might be traditionally underserved by the venture community, broadly speaking, as a generalization. But we're looking for opportunities that we believe are these massive market opportunities that will drive those kind of financial returns you were talking about, John. But also, some other organizations might not have the kind of category expertise and networks that allow them access to those type of investments. And one of the things that we really focus on too, and I kind of alluded to this in the beginning, is because we're really focused in this category, we have a perspective on these various verticals we're investing in. We're actively looking for certain types of companies where we think there are those opportunities rather than just kind of reacting to what's coming in. And we're as a result, building relationships with entrepreneurs over time, adding value along the way. And in the cases that we've led rounds, we've preempted those rounds, and then created, a really, quick, and a process that allows the CEOs to continue to stay focused on what's most important to them, like building the business, while also getting the partner they want in their next round. And so we take pride also in being able to be in a position to preempt and to be able to create those experiences for CEOs and build relationships with them, and help them to kind of stay focused on what's most important.
Oh, thank you. And, it's fascinating you say you also have an active approach to outreaching and building relationships with these entrepreneurs. What do you find you get to discover about the entrepreneur that perhaps a more passive investment strategy and inbound request, right, might not give you the time to do the diligence you need on the founder, co-founding team?
Right. Yeah, in many cases, we've known the CEO for years before we're investing in them. Actually, one of our CEOs, I was a TA for her when I was in graduate school. Another one, that is not how we source, it's just students that we've taught. But it's a funny, 7-8 years later kind of thing. But we tend to, as you build a relationship over time, see how they're executing against their plan, obviously, but two, you start to see what are the areas that they could use specific support around as they're building their business. And so one of the things I also mentioned is that we help our founders, to the extent they want it, to get connected with experts that will help build the business, but also coaches and other folks who can help them as individuals thrive as they're scaling. And so it's kind of understanding, we have like a menu, I would say, of supports we have for different folks, and understanding what's the right combination to support the CEO as they're going through this next part of the business, or the next phase of the business, I should say. But I think it's around really understanding them as individuals, their goals. And a lot of times you get to know their families. And in one case, one of the CEOs, I went to college with his wife. So you really get to know people as individuals as well as how they run their business. And I think you kind of see that over time. In some cases, this is the second time we've worked with a CEO. One that we led that we're on the board of now, I observed on his previous board where he's chairman of that company. So, we've actually worked with them in the past. And so we take that approach to have really strong conviction in the CEO. So that tends to be less of the focus of the diligence. And you can have one that's really about, is this the right time to infuse this capital versus like, do I believe in this person? Because we already have conviction there. So it's much more around like the plan and what they need and the capital needs of the business, versus like, do I believe in this person when you're doing that kind of process.
Yeah, wow, that's a big component to have ticked off around the diligence on the founder and the team before you get into conversations.
And we still do it, more of it, but I think you're going in with that perspective that you have conviction there.
Yeah. And thanks. And curious as well, because you're looking when you look at future of work and upward mobility and looking for these category defining companies. I mean, in your experience, a lot of category defining companies aren't easy to evaluate using precedents. Yeah. And so, when you get to the stage where there is a market opportunity and the right founder is kind of navigating through that complexity with no previously laid track, how do you evaluate those companies, or how do you identify them enough to want to dig deeper in a way that maybe someone who's relying too much on history might not be able to?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think part of the way that we at least think about that is like a company like LearnIn is a good example. So this is the company I mentioned that was founded by David Blake. He's the chairman of Degreed. And then he left as CEO to start new companies. And again, he's still chairman there. But when we came together to preempt that, this was actually a seed. We primarily do Series A. But Bridget and I had seen, because of the kind of time we've spent in this category, like thousands of companies kind of specifically in and around this category. And so we have that piece of it. We have the research focus that we do. So really looking to see what we believe are the macro trends and the policy implications that are driving the category. And so with LearnIn, what it does is it's a company that's helping, as I mentioned, enterprises better manage their existing workforce. So some of the trends I talked about before, I was looking for stuff that's going to help address this problem, right? So there's a stat that the World Economic Forum put out that's like 54% of people need significant, like reskilling or upskilling by 2022, like 2 years, not even 2 years. And we can't do that from the traditional education system that exists today. So one of our perspectives is that the employer is now becoming a different unit of delivery, and there's a new social contract that's starting to emerge between employers and employees. We can't hire and fire our way out of this problem. The traditional education system is not, on average, putting people into workforce prepared for the jobs they're going to do. So we have to think about how we address this problem. There's other stats, like 70% of CEOs say they have huge skills gaps in their companies, right? And so we can't address this incrementally. And so we had been looking for something that was like, how are we going to actually facilitate this kind of upskilling at scale? And how is it going to come from the employers? And most employers also say they're not equipped to kind of do this now with their in-house capabilities. It's like 16% say they are from a McKinsey study. So we had all these stats, right? We're kind of underlying how we're thinking about this category. And we sat down with David to talk about this idea. This is like on a napkin in a coffee shop type of thing. And, we were very much like, yes, let's go do this together. We're going to preempt this round and work on this with you because we see the confluence of all the research that we've seen. We believe this matters. The policy around this category, around tuition benefits and things, we see opportunity there to use those in a better way. Bridget from her experience investing in Guild, me from my work at Degreed. And this is the team we have conviction in. So David, started there and had two other people from Degreed with him. And then the other woman who became his CEO, I actually introduced David to the previous year, knew her really well. So we had conviction in that white space. Like there's no one doing this. We had conviction in this team. And we also had been looking for something that was addressing this specific problem. And so to your point around founders there's not precedent, it's a combination of those, I think, three things for us is understanding what's driving, in our view, the market opportunity, what's the real problem and like what are the trends around that? But how do we see that historically and what's the future of that? For us, we specifically think about what are the policy implications around that? And then we think about, are these the right people do we have conviction in their ability to go after this particular untackled problem? And in David's case, Bridget and I had both known him for years, and I had actually directly worked on his previous board. He's a kind of future work expert, author, and, works with a number of the larger companies around these issues. And that's what gave us conviction to, kind of go after that as a category defining company. Does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense. Thanks for sharing all this insight. I mean, it was very deep into, the psychology of your fund, and but we're going to go deeper, but we're going to take a bit of a pivot, to talk about Bridget and you, you two came together, started Firework VC, have been actively investing. Can you tell us a bit about kind of your GP duo choreography? We originally wanted both on the show, but we can't. It's hard to manage two. So
running an online school right now.
You were selected to be the voice, but tell us about the partnership. How you two synergize, so to speak. and what you find impressive about Bridget and what she finds impressive about you in the partnership.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate the question. So I'll kind of step back in how we kind of came together. So I'd known Bridget. She was one of the first people I met when I moved out to San Francisco to start investing. So I reached out to her really early in my career because she had led investments in a few companies that I was really excited about. So at that time, she had done the Series A, and she already previously done the seed for Guild Education and BetterUp, which are two companies now that really influence the way we think about this category. And I had the kind of seeds of this when I started investing, originally started investing, but I was really excited about those type of companies as opportunities. And those have gone on to become billion-dollar companies that we really believe define this space and influence our thinking about our thesis. So I reached out to her around to meet her because she had done these investments, and also because she was a female GP leading investments in human capital. At that time, she was a GP at Social Capital, and I really admired and wanted to build my network among female VCs. I at the time worked at an all-male team who was great, but I was looking to still build that as well. And so we started meeting regularly and sharing deals. We actually observed on a board together. We had co-investments across our funds. And over time, it became really clear to us that we had the shared view of this market opportunity, which has become Firework. Also a focus, the same kind of perspective on stage. So one of our, also our beliefs is that the category expertise really matters in the early stages. We're joining boards, we're working closely with founders, and we think that that's the stage where we can be of most value as people who have specialized networks in this space before they're just kind of in growthier rounds. And the other piece that was really, I think, is core to our partnership is that we have a similar view, as I mentioned, on kind of culture and venture and how we think about our own professional and personal growth. And so in terms of culture, Bridget and I focus a lot on how we think or how we build a platform that has really values diversity of thought, different experiences. I love with Bridget and I, we both obviously been venture investing for a number of years, but we have complementary backgrounds outside of that really help us in terms of our diligence, sourcing, post-investment support, and all that. And it's how we're looking to build out our team, is to really be a platform where folks can have that, like diversity of thought's really valued. The other piece is, as I mentioned, this focus on professional and personal growth. People are still people when they go to work, and they have challenges that they need to kind of work through and areas for growth. We, as I mentioned, think about this with our CEOs in terms of getting them access to coaches and other supports that help them thrive as individuals and CEOs and to create the type of cultures we want them to scale over time. We also do that as a team. We view this as not something that's fixing a problem. It's supercharging the strength of your team, is by creating that really transparent, open communication and culture that we believe is really important in a thriving venture partnership. As you both know, one of the questions that LPs are most focused on in new funds is, what's the strength of the partnership? And we invested really early in that for ourselves and for the teams around us. We believe it's actually de-risking our portfolio by getting them the support to address any challenges they have internally head on, right? And we believe in that for us from the beginning, where it's around creating an even stronger partnership and preventing them from being any kind of unnecessary challenges in the future. The other piece I just mentioned on strength of partnership. So Bridget and I, with the shelter-in-place order happened, obviously we're in these unprecedented times. We joke, we actually decided to shelter in place together so we can continue investing, continue to build the firm. We've been really active investing at this time. And part of that's because we already had that relationship beginning before this happened, but then took this as an opportunity to continue to really strengthen partnership, work together, continue building the firm, even through this kind of, challenging time. So in terms of our partnership, I'd say it's built on, again, that shared view of the market opportunity, shared focus on stage, shared view of culture for our team and shared view of how we want to support founders. And we believe that's a reflection, again, of our thesis of what the future of work is. We believe the future of work does think about people holistically and provides them with those supports and services they need to thrive, from an investment category opportunity. And then we also mirror that in our work and with our founders. Does that answer your question?
Very much. Thanks for, I know, and we're heading up on time, but I mean, we could have you speak so much longer on this topic, and I'm going to ask an embarrassing question. If future LPs who are aligned with the space and the mission of what Firework are doing, if they're watching this video in the future, and you didn't have to explain, convince, or get through any preconceived notions, what would you really want them to understand about you and Bridget and Firework, truly? What message would you want them to get undistorted, clear as day?
It's a good question. I'd say a couple of points. I'd say the future of work is an emerging market opportunity it's really big. And what we're excited about it is that it cuts across so many different verticals. It cuts across human resources, financial services, health, and education. And we believe it takes a new perspective, a new category expertise to go win in that market. One comment on that is folks will talk about generalists getting excited about the space. And we think that's great, actually, just showing more excitement around the category. But we do believe that the best entrepreneurs in the category will still pick people who have that specific expertise to help them build their business. So one is that we expect that this is a new category that requires expertise. Two, research shows this, and we hope to prove it, is that diversity of thought improves your returns, and that these type of supports and services that we're providing for in terms of our partnership and for our CEOs, we also believe that will drive returns and kind of change. We believe that we can change the way it's a nebulous thing to say, but doing business differently in venture can actually drive outsized returns. I'll phrase it that way. I think those are the two main takeaways of how we think about the firm, is both the market opportunity and then one, that market opportunity, and two, how you actually do business as a fund matters, and how it will drive the kind of return profile that you want to see.
Really nicely said. Thank you, Bridget. And Arjun, any final remarks? Anything on your end?
No, thanks, Ashley. Really appreciate the time. And this was wonderful.
Great. Well, thank you both. I really appreciate it.